meeting to order, Wednesday, June 18th here at 11:01. Can we get a roll call?
Commissioner Eisenberger,
Here.
Commissioner Carpenter,
Here.
Commissioner Stahl,
Here.
Chair Wheeler,
Here.
Commissioner Tucker. Here. Commissioner Perkins should be joining online, but is not online yet. And then Commissioner Spence is absent as of right now.
Okay, thank you. Looks like we have a quorum. First item of business is the approval of the May 21 meeting minutes, which Vice Chair Stahl ran. Making a motion.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll second the motion.
All right, we got a motion second. Any discussion needed on that? All right. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Perfect.
And Vice Chair Stahl did a phenomenal job last month, so.
Perfect.
The hottest 17 minutes and just.
We're looking for a replacement for the chairman, so that's great.
Thanks for that.
First thing we have is commission business. It looks like we have none. Nothing to add. First public hearing we have is annexation 2025-01-annex 575 Southeast Eagle Creek Road. Before we get into that, I need to declare a actual conflict of interest on this. So I'm going to recuse myself after reading the statement. Before we begin deliberation on this agenda item, I need to declare an actual conflict of interest as defined under Oregon Revised Statute, Chapter 244. This matter will result in a financial benefit or detriment to me, which meets the legal threshold for conflict of interest. Specifically, I'm a partial owner in this proposed annexation, and so I would be affected by the value in the decision. In compliance with Oregon ethics law and the interest in transparency, I will be recusing myself from the participation in discussion or voting on this item. I will, however, return after this to help with the rest of the meeting. So with that, you get the official gavel just in case you need it.
Okay,
And I'm going to step out into the audience and
there you go.
do my thing.
Well, I believe we probably step over to Alan at this point and do we have a presentation?
We sure do. I will share my screen.
We have to go to. Did we have to jump into, before we get too far into this, do we have to jump into some public discussion prior to this, or yes or no? After the staff report, okay, great.
Yeah, I'll go through next steps. and
Okay.
everything. Okay, thanks all. Good morning. Planning Commission and members of the public. I will now present staff's report to the Planning Commission for 2025-01
Making sure we're.
annex.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Go ahead. Okay.
See if I can get through the word specificity and get started.
All right, just some general information about the applicants and the property. The applicant is Matt Day at the address listed below. The property is tax lot 34E, 20AB, lot 200 at the addresses listed there. And the zoning is central mixed use. And the proposal as submitted is for the annexation of about a 1.5 acre lot into Estacada city limits. There was no change to the central mixed use comp plan map designation that was proposed, and there's no development proposed at this time. Agency comments were submitted by the city engineer and the fire marshal. And here's a shot of the subject site. This is from 2022, but I believe that currently it looks very much the same. It's undeveloped lot. It's on the west side of Southeast Eagle Creek Road, right across from a church and Campanella Estates. And we'll just jump into the approval criteria. So there are basically 3 sections of criteria that we'll go over. The first is the statewide planning goal. Number 10, that's relates to housing. And then we have 2 chapters from our own municipal code. That's 16 16.101 for zone changes and 16.124 for annexations. Okay. So statewide planning goal 10 requires the city to have an adopted and state acknowledged plan for how its housing needs will be met over a 20-year period. And so our 2021 housing needs analysis, that's the HNA up there. That's our adopted and state acknowledged plan for meeting those housing needs over the next 20 years. And that HNA identified the needs for all housing types in the city over those 20 years. And the comprehensive plan designation, central mixed use, into which the annexed or the property requesting to annex would become. That allows for greater residential density than the county's RRFF5 designation, the rural residential farm and forestry 5-acre zone in which the parcel is currently zoned. And so this annexation proposal would increase the amount of buildable land available for the city for residential use. It also increases the allowable residential density and also the variety of potential housing types that could be built on that land. And so statewide planning goal 10 is met. And I will move on to the zone changes chapter in our municipal code. Okay, so the first section is authorization to grant or deny zone changes, and there are 5 criteria under this section. And one is that the application is consistent with the comp plan, that public services are available to the site requested to annex, that the transportation system in the city is adequate to support development on that property, that the request is consistent with the Oregon Highway Plan, and that the transportation system is adequately safe. And we find that all 5 criteria are either met or they're not applicable at this time. And so that chapter, zone changes, is met. And we'll move on to the chapter on annexations. Okay, so there's 2 basic criteria that must be met for an annexation proposal to be valid. First, right down there at the bottom, the site must be located within the Estacada Urban Growth Boundary, or UGB. And so I put a map here of the city bounded by the UGB. There's that faint dashed line, but anything in color there, that's within the UGB. And you can see I'm pointing to the property there with the black arrow. We can see clearly that is located within city's UGB. And second, the site must be contiguous to existing city limits. And so we can see here that the proposed property is not contiguous to city limits. There's a gap there along the road. However, if the section of Eagle Creek Road next to that lot is included in the annexation, then the criterion is satisfied. And there are 3 other relevant criteria in this chapter. The first one is here, letter A. The proposed use for the site complies with the Estacada Comprehensive Plan and with the designation on the Estacada Comprehensive Plan map. Second, adequate capacity of urban services exists or can be made available within 3 years. And findings documenting the availability of police, fire, parks, and school facilities and services shall be made to allow for findings either for or against the proposed annexation. So I'll briefly go over each criterion to discuss how this application meets each standard. Okay, so for criterion A, the applicant proposes to zone the property according to the comp plan designation central mixed use, so that first criterion is satisfied. For criterion B, the city engineer confirms that city infrastructure and services can support future development, so that is met. And for number C, the findings documenting the availability of police, fire, parks, etc. Estacada School District and Fire District were both notified and did not submit concerns. Police services will be provided by Clackamas County Sheriff, and there are adequate park services or park facilities nearby. And so staff finds that the annexations chapter of our municipal code is met or can be met. And so our recommendation is to approve the annexation. And we are recommending 4 conditions of approval, and I'll go through each of those now briefly. Okay, so the first is to require the applicant to include the segment of Eagle Creek Road stretching from the northern boundary of the subject property southward to meet the current city boundary. And so just again, that would mean increasing the territory to be annexed from this to this. And then just briefly going over the last 3, a waiver of remonstrance against the future right-of-way dedication or improvements would be required. The applicant must submit a legal description and survey documents to the State Department of Revenue and get Department of Revenue approval for those documents. And finally, the city will adopt an ordinance to finalize the annexation and update the official comprehensive plan and zoning maps. All right. And so next steps, I'll take any questions that the commission has. The applicant can comment if they like. We'll hear any public testimony. Planning commission can discuss. And finally, we will be looking for a decision on this annexation request.
Quick question on utilities. If it were annexed inside the city limits, would there then be a requirement to tap into the sewer and some of those other requirements inside of that? I see in the sheet that it at least is there. Is that a requirement or is that up to the owner?
It depends on the property. I believe that the reason for annexing is to develop. And
Yeah.
at that point, then connections would be made.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it's not a requirement.
It's not a hard requirement. Yeah, there's some cities that have annexed like far out, like contiguous to city limits, but not close to existing sewer
Okay.
services.
Yeah, I was just curious.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So in cases like that, we wouldn't, but I think that sooner than later, this property would connect to sewer.
Great.
network. Yeah.
Thank you.
I find that question interesting because the sewer just went past that property. I mean,
Oh,
it's
in this
right
case,
there.
yes, in this case, it's right there. There would be no
Mhm.
problem to connect.
Sure.
I mean, we wouldn't allow them if they annex to say, put a septic tank in. Yes, I mean, at the point of development, utilities would be required, but before
That's
that
what I was
time.
asking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At the
Yeah,
time of
I get it.
development.
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess at this point, we can get public comment on this. If there's not any more questions, or do you have?
Well, yeah, let's give the
Well, wait.
applicant a chance to comment and then we can hear any public testimony.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so with that road change that you're talking about annexing with it, that Eagle Creek, now remind me, didn't we already get given that portion of the road?
That's a great question, and that's why there was a little bit of confusion from staff around this. So yes, the city has jurisdiction over Eagle Creek Road south of Deuce, all the way down. However, sections of Eagle Creek, or not every section of Eagle Creek has annexed in this city. So it's, some of the areas are, city controls it, city's responsible for maintenance, but it's not technically annexed into the city yet. So yeah, there's a little bit of confusion about this, and I caught this kind of at the last minute. So yeah, does that make sense? Yeah, there's basically like a memorandum of agreement with the county that we take over the jurisdiction, but yeah, it's in this kind of like limbo between being within city limits and.
So essentially, we own the liability and the cost and the maintenance and everything that would be associated with it, but the actual technical property is still the county's.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, the county we did sign an agreement with them. I mean, part of the agreement was that the county gave a certain amount of money to the city for maintenance.
Okay.
Yeah, but yeah, it's in that technical limbo, like you described. Exactly.
And then my only other question with that was just, and a pretty standard, just an impact study on the neighbors. What, will
Mhm.
that change anything for any of those neighbors that are neighboring that? Have you reached out to them if there's ever any comment from any of those?
Did we get a comment? I don't believe we did
On
get a
that
comment on
neighboring.
that. We did notice, we did the standard noticing 100 feet.
Okay.
I didn't see any in the packet.
Yeah, I don't think that there are any. We did receive a comment for the other. We received a letter for the other application, but not this one, for the ordinance. Yeah, so all property owners were notified within 100 feet of the property and we didn't.
Okay, and there was just nothing from it.
Yeah.
That's all I was curious.
Okay, thanks.
Anyone else? Anyone online? We have any questions from our,
Not from me.
okay. So I guess we'll bounce out of this portion into public comment on this. And I'm supposed to read this particular statement quickly. Oh, okay. Maybe I'm a little ahead of myself here. Do the applicants have anything they want to say? Go ahead, go ahead.
There we go. Hi, everybody. I'm Ben Wheeler. I was notified that I'm actually not an owner of this property. I'm married to somebody that owns this property. Um, Question on the annexation of the Clackamas County portion. So does that mean that said property owner is required for Half Street improvements on that annexed property that isn't ours?
Oh, you mean on the east side?
No. On the cherry stem that connects it. to-
Yeah, let's go back.
Yeah, so everything from the E and the R on Creek Road there,
Oh, right, south.
south, which isn't our property proper.
You would not be responsible for that because it's not fronting your property.
Okay. Okay, so that answers that. And the other thing was, is as far as Commissioner Carpenter's question regarding utilities, the plan is to get us past go here with the annexation, and then we will move into figuring out what exactly we're gonna do. In the application, we kind of laid out either fourplexes, triplexes, or duplexes, whatever financially makes sense. But ideally make a different product than the apartments or the single family houses across the street.
Sure.
And maybe even a cottage cluster if that makes sense financially. Ideally, again, differentiating a little bit from just apartments, something with good parking, i.e. like garages or more than one parking spot. It's kind of the direction we're leaning. Anything else to add? I mean, that generally it. So hopefully we pass go here and then we get into the subdivision stage where we'll be back at the planning commission, right?
Yeah.
And with a solid plan, and at that point, utilities would be brought in from the street, so.
And I wasn't asking specifically for this, but just in general, what's the code on people who are coming into, but right on the fringes of, what are the requirements for utilities?
Perfect.
Yeah, those requirements are located elsewhere in the code, not Title 16. So a little bit out of my wheelhouse, but yeah, we talked among staff with Don and Public Works and stuff, and it just,
So the way the code is written, it's in Title 13. It's 13.12.060 and says that connections of existing septic tanks may continue until such time public sewer is available, or the council shall by resolution determine connection constitutes a public health hazard.
Perfect. Thank you.
And public sewer is considered available when it's within 100 feet of the affected property and 200 feet of the building sewer.
Awesome. That answers it perfectly. Thank you.
And one last note, there's no current structures on there, so it's just a bare ground, so.
Sure.
All intentions of hooking to the city of Escada services. Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Now we go to the public comment, and I don't see any public that do I have anybody on the line or wants to make a public comment? I'm not seeing anybody. So we're up for the vote. So let's take a look at our options here.
You still need to
and I will
read
entertain-
that statement.
What now?
You
I
still
still
need
have
to
to read the
read-
statement?
yeah.
Okay. Thank you. An issue may be at the basis for an appeal to the city council must be raised prior to the close of the record at the final evidentiary hearing on the specific application, such issues be raised at such specificity so as I lost myself here. So as to afford the city council and the parties of adequate opportunity to respond to each issue. Failure of an issue to be raised at the hearing in person or by letter, or failure to provide sufficient specificity to afford the city council, the parties an adequate opportunity to respond to the issue precludes appeal to the city council on that issue. Okay, now I'll entertain. Now we'll entertain motions.
I'd like to make a motion to pass the approval or
I should specify, so planning commission isn't the final decision maker here. You're recommending either approval or denial to city council. So that's why it's written that way.
I'd like to recommend approval as presented by staff.
And I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Do I have any opposed? I find it has passed by unanimous decision. Not hearing otherwise. Now where do we move to? Do we bring Mr. Wheeler back?
Yep.
Yeah, Mr. Williams, come back.
Come on back.
July 14th,
14th,
Yep.
okay.
which is I believe, not the
Yep.
next council meeting, but the one after.
Come Mr. Wheeler to Counselor, to Chair Wheeler.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Beauty of living in a small town, we get to wear multiple hats.
Amen.
Moving on to the next thing, we have, that thing is ordinance, 2025-004 title, 16 Development Code Amendments. And this is, again, something that's gonna come before us, and then it gets a recommendation to the city council.
That's right.
All right, Alan, go ahead and, take it away. As you're the expert.
Oh, boy. Right. You will soon be experts too. All right, so I will now present staff's report. The Planning Commission for Ordinance 2025-004, what we're calling the cannabis in M1 code amendments. Okay, so I'm going to give some background. I'm essentially reading from the staff report. I've kind of condensed it a bit, so please bear with me. So in 2016, City Council voted to include marijuana production and processing as uses allowed outright in the light industrial zone. Since that time, the city has committed significant resources toward enforcing M1 related municipal code regulations, as well as addressing associated criminal violations. The most common complaint, however, is related to cannabis processing and production in the M1 zone, concerns about nuisance odors. The city has attempted to enforce odor control standards through education, inspections of odor control equipment, and recommendations for good management, things like reminders that doors be kept closed. However, despite strict municipal code standards regulating mechanical control of odor at marijuana facilities, levels of odor in the M1 zone often reach levels and durations that constitute a nuisance. And so, in February 2025, City Council directed staff to propose regulatory solution options to better deal with the various issues involving cannabis businesses. And then the following month, staff proposed potential solutions, at which time council also directed staff to draft code amendments based on those proposed solutions. And that brings us to today. And so in a nutshell, this ordinance would prohibit new cannabis production and processing businesses within city limits, not just in the M1 zone, and also revise operational and licensing requirements for existing cannabis production and processing businesses. And if there are any questions about any of the specific sections of the draft amendments, we can address those after my presentation. So I will move now to the approval criteria. Excuse me. So in order for City Council to adopt this ordinance, which involves amending the city's development code or Title 16, all relevant approval criteria must be met. And the relevant approval criteria in this case includes Oregon's statewide planning goals, the city's comprehensive plan, and this chapter 16.128 of the city's municipal code. So we're going to start there with the municipal code. Okay, so there's 4 sections here that must be met, and this is the first. So the authorization to initiate legislative amendments, they can be initiated only by the Planning Commission or City Council. And that has been met. They were initiated by City Council. Okay, the second criteria is the amendment procedure. So basically, this is what we're doing now. Planning Commission makes a recommendation to City Council upon completion of a public hearing, which is what we're having. And then the Planning Commission and City Council will adopt findings to establish whether the legislative amendment conflicts or does not conflict with provisions of Title 16 or the comp plan. And after that, a legislative amendment may be made by City Council after Planning Commission's recommendation and after a public hearing. So these criteria will be met. Like I said, we're right in the middle of this. Okay, and the third section is on findings. Findings shall be made in writing and shall be made public and shall be consistent and in conformance with applicable regulations of the municipal code and the comp plan. And these criteria will also be met. And finally, for this section, limitation standard, no application for an amendment to the development code shall be considered by Planning Commission within a 1-year period immediately following a previous denial of a similar request. And no similar amendment has been proposed and then denied in the last year, so this criterion is met. And so now we'll move to discussing the statewide planning goals and the city's comp plan goals. Okay, so the city sent published information about this hearing to the local paper and on the city website. We also sent notice to the State Planning Agency, DLCD, and we are following all other pertinent land use laws related to public hearings. And so these 2 pairs of procedural goals have been met or are being met. And here is just a list of all the goals that do not apply to this ordinance. It's most of them, most of the state and the comprehensive plan goals don't apply. But there is one comprehensive plan chapter that is related to these amendments, and that's chapter 7 on economic development. And specifically, there's 2 policies that apply here. The first is general policy 4. I'll just read that quickly. It's to retain suitable industrial land for industrial purposes and limit retail and other potential conflicting uses in industrial zones to support industrial area businesses. And so by eliminating the allowance for cannabis uses in M1, this ordinance will limit conflicting uses in that zone and thereby support affected industrial area businesses, which is consistent with this policy goal. And then the second is General Policy 6, which aims to position Estacada as a supportive and responsive business environment. And so by responding to complaints of nuisance odor interfering with business operations in the city's industrial zone, this ordinance demonstrates the city's commitment to foster a supportive and responsive business environment consistent with the aim of this general policy goal. And so we find that these amendments are consistent with chapter 7 of the comp plan. And that brings us to our recommendation, which is to approve ordinance 2025-004. And we're recommending outright approval without any conditions. And that's all I have. So I'll take questions. We can hear from the public. The city is the applicant, so we're not going to, I think we've already commented on that, but yeah, public testimony, and then commission can discuss, and then a decision.
Okay, thank you. First off, this was brought up from a little background, as Alan said out of the gate was, it's an ongoing issue, and that's why why it's before us now. We had the help of our city attorney, Peter. Unfortunately, Peter passed away about a week ago,
What?
Last
That's
week
Thursday.
on
Thursday.
Thursday.
unexpectedly. And so he was at the heart of this, all the legal side of this stuff, helping staff come up with this. And again, this is a recommendation to the city council. So right now, we're a little bit in limbo with a new city attorney. Is that correct?
Correct, but the ordinance as included in your packet was reviewed by Peter prior to his passing.
Perfect. Just to get that out there in the public, just so we know what we have legal ground to stand on. And so, again, our decision here as a planning commission is to recommend to the city council, which I assume would probably be that same July 17th meeting or somewhere.
Yes, yep.
That they have the final decision on this. So our recommendation just goes to them. So with that, do we have any questions for staff?
I have one, you just answered question number 2, I think, but what does this do for current businesses there? And obviously it prohibits future businesses, but is there grandfather, or does this code change the expectations for them retroactively?
It's a great question.
So, yes, that's a great question. So existing businesses would be allowed to continue.
Okay,
Yeah, they'd be grandfathered in, as you said, the technical term is existing non-conforming use.
okay.
And so those can continue as long as they don't stop operation, I think, for over a year.
Okay.
And as far as what would be expected of them moving forward, so that would be the second part of this. I'll just go back to the,
Is that transferable when they sell it? Because if not, you just destroyed somebody's business. I mean,
Yeah,
if I
I
invested
think it is
$1 million
yeah.
and
Yeah.
it would
Yeah,
be
as long as
transferable.
there is not an interruption in use.
Yeah,
for-
that's
so
the 1 year.
That's the 1 year. So if they stopped it and then waited a year to sell it, then they could not start a new facility. But if they sold it and there was a continuous use without interruption, then it can continue.
Yeah, but just to finish answering your question, Ryan. So existing businesses would be subject to the new operational and licensing requirements. So that would be, there were revisions to things like odor control plans and inspections and things like that. So that's kind of the nitty gritty of the
Okay, thank
language,
you.
which is, it's all included in the draft.
Yeah, this was actually a very thorough packet. I read through it and I
Okay.
appreciated all of your connections to both state and local. It was excellently done. I was
Thank you.
just curious about that.
Okay, thanks.
Do we know how many people are employed currently in the industrial park in the cannabis industry?
I don't know. Do you know about that?
I think we have either 5 or 6 facilities. They don't generally have a whole lot of employees. They're not heavy employers.
Yeah, I've seen like 20 or 30 at the small one. It changed. So I'm guessing there's at least 100 or 200 employees down there just by
I don't think it's that
guesstimate.
many. I would be
I don't-
really surprised if it's
Mhm.
that.
I would be surprised, yeah,
Yeah.
because some of the facilities, it's maybe seasonal. If they're grow operations, they don't necessarily have.
Do we know how much tax revenue these businesses are bringing in that we're basically potentially putting an end to from those businesses?
No, so you're talking specifically about like the marijuana tax
The
revenue?
cannabis industry, how much
okay.
are we gonna lose if we lose that industry in this town?
So the measure changed and changed the allowance for cities. So it greatly decreased the amount of revenue that the city is getting in relation to those industries. So I don't have an
But
exact
it would still
number,
be-
but it's not as high as it would have been. And since we're still allowing retail, while we don't have any, it's still an allowable use for retail in the city. That would still be a potential tax revenue source.
It is allowed retail?
There, retail
The
is
highway-
is allowed
highway
in highway
commercials.
commercial.
Highway commercial zone.
Yeah,
And I believe in another zone. as well.
yeah.
There's 2
I
zones.
mean, we'd have to look at the.
I understand from talking to people out around town that the major problem was a manufacturer that was operating without the proper licensures. That he was the major compliant. Now that he is gone and shut down, it looked like they were moving out the other day when we went out there, or at least not, hopefully still doing illegal operation. Have the complaints gone down? I want to make sure we're not punishing the rest of the cannabis industry for what one illegal bad player was
Yeah,
doing
we've
down there.
it's come and gone. So generally speaking, these industries have not necessarily lasted a long time. There's some of them that have been in there quite a while, but I know we had one business that was in there that was a legal operation that we had a lot of issues with. We had several code complaints and that business eventually shut down. And then, but the one most recently was an illegal operation that was shut down and they have exited. We are not seeing a significant number of complaints right now.
Yeah.
So yeah, the businesses that are currently in the park right now are generally good neighbors.
I would rather do a more nuanced approach to this. I don't know why the city got involved in monitoring this in the first place. I come from the health industry and a lot of other industry in my past life. And for a small town to take on the regulatory of this makes no sense to me at all. There's groups out there like NAFA, the National Air Filters Association, which put out really strict guidelines on cannabis indoor operation and tell you exactly the equipment and everything. I would personally think it'd be a smarter move for the city to require like biannual inspections by a certified company than to take on any monitoring of this ourselves. Just put the onus and the cost on the industry that's causing the problem. And that just seems like a more neighborly approach to it. And I don't know who in the city has the qualifications to check whether a UV system or carbon filters at end of life, or if you're putting too much CFM through those to deplete them or whatever. And this goes beyond the cannabis industry. I don't get why we're attacking cannabis when I understand the company that was the main culprit down there had a license to do other extractions. So okay, not true?
Like the most recent one?
I heard there was a company down there that had a license for extracting other than a controlled substance.
So
And-
cannabis includes hemp.
Yeah, okay. On there, is that what they were as a hemp? Because there's other extractions too that could fall right out of this, and we could be in the same place a month from now. We're hitting
Yes.
cannabis. We're
That's
not.
the council is also evaluating the odor code, which deals with all odors, not specifically cannabis,
Mhm.
including like we have received complaints previously about paint. So that has been another odor issue that has arisen.
How about the wastewater treatment?
Oh, the
plant?
wastewater, yes, as we ourselves are tackling that. And
Well, that
so,
brings me to
and that is not
question,
in
if we,
development.
you know, we have other businesses. What if we allowed a timber company to go down there and do laminate beams, you know, glue lams?
Yep, there's,
That
Well,
can do.
they
a
would be
lot of-
subject to the odor control.
They'd be
in
subject to the
not,
odor
yeah,
control.
not in the development code, but was it Title
Title
8?
8.
Yeah,
Mhm.
Title 8.
So it seems we should be more going down that road to try and manage
Well,
that first.
that is also
before-
happening. So there's this contingent,
Close
and then
down.
there's, council is also passing
Yeah.
amendments to other titles as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, this town needs more tax revenue one way or another. And I get you don't want to hurt the existing businesses. I feel sorry for them down there that have had to put up for, you know,
We have lost businesses that
Inaction.
have left.
on it.
Jonathan, go ahead.
Yeah, from the council perspective, I'd just like to add some context here for the commission so that you guys understand some more coming directly from us. This was triggered by multiple complaints. These complaints span back a period of several years.
Mhm.
Okay, and they've been going back and forth between email, between city staff and city leadership and us, and this has been a very time-consuming thing, and we did take the more moderate approach, tried to suggest filter changes, things like that. We went that route first. We've also reached out and invited the owners of these companies multiple times to come and be present for the conversations regarding the code, of which I've seen them in the audience one time, and it was the last meeting when we didn't discuss it. We moved it to an executive session to have the conversation. And then the other thing with that is the businesses in the industrial park that own multiple business buildings, like 6 or 7, are posturing that this is a problem for them. They have purchased assets in other states to be able to move if they need.
Mhm.
And then they've also additionally, they have tried to bring businesses in, bring their partner friends or other, say, technology sources that would come manufacturing things that would support the technologies that are already going on. And those businesses either come and go because of the odor, or they refuse to when they come and do a site visit because of the smell. So this has been, from the council's perspective, this is not a random, just pick on the cannabis industry. This was triggered from multiple complaints and then multiple members of the community saying that if we're going to grow, vested members of the industrial park saying that if they want to invite their friends or other people into this business, that this is something that's going to be need to be rectified because it's continually causing a clash. It is a nuisance. I would encourage you to go spend 2 hours down there.
I have.
On a
I
windy
have.
day. Yeah, and I'm not
I've
saying
talked
that
To the
for that.
Northwest Tech people, I've talked to multiple employees down there, actually. Some of them have never heard of this odor problem. Others say it's repulsive and, we can't.
Yeah.
So it does appear to be a moving problem that is going on.
Well, I just wanted you to understand more for context. The only thing I wanted to put in here is that this is a revolving thing. This wasn't like a spurt of, oh, let's go target cannabis today for this. It was paint is included in this. Like Alan said, this is a
Yeah.
multi-factor thing going on. We're kind of working on a couple
But
different.
cannabis is the only one you're eliminating. I mean, we're not talking about eliminating other extractions
Yes.
or other things that could be just as equally, just because they haven't happened yet. I'd rather see a code written that covered, so we don't end
So-
up doing this for every.
The way the current code reads, many of those extractions, the code reads, what is it? An allowable use that does not require a DEQ permit. And so many of those other extractions or heavy refinement processes would not be an allowable use as our current code reads. I can find it
That's
exactly.
fine.
So it's not that the marijuana is really kind of the own major extraction that is outright allowed in the code currently.
Mhm. I think it'd be a better approach, as I said before, to require like a biannual certification from following the NAFA guidelines for indoor cannabis and see within a year if Revene and, if the complaints didn't go away, try and resolve it instead of trying to do it in-house. I mean, I feel sorry for you guys trying to
We-
deal with vendors and, beating your head against.
We
in industry.
require them as part of the business licensing process to produce documents from their engineers that identify that they have the required filtration system to meet the requirements.
Yeah, and those need to be maintained monthly. I mean, so
And-
having
and-
a
yeah.
Also, an
biannual
odor control
report.
plan, like a maintenance plan would be required as part of these. too.
Yeah,
With
the-
specifics about what is being maintained, how often, and who's doing that.
Yeah,
So,
the way this is written, it's gonna devalue these businesses, and I just hate to see to do that in a little town with a tax. That we need more infrastructure and more tax
I mean,
base.
we'd have to talk to an economic development professional, but I don't know that it would necessarily devalue the business. I mean, it might devalue the current business, but if it's going to devalue the entire park, because we are seeing that these buildings, once they're built, after a marijuana business moves out and the building has been cleaned, other businesses are moving in. So I don't necessarily see that this would equal vacancies if we lost those businesses based on the available industrial land in our region. There's not a whole lot available. And so there's a high demand.
That industrial park was built in 2016. What is it, about 30 or 40% occupied right now?
It's had various phases dating back to 2000s, early 2000s.
That it's like 30 or 40% occupied at most?
So there's a big 50-acre lot, which it kind of is hard to account for because that getting a big user in there is harder.
No, that's
Getting
okay.
the smaller users in there, we see that almost pretty regular churn.
Yeah, I think the Lock Martin subdivision, which is what, 19 or 20 lots, I think that's selling out like quickly, and that was just platted like a year ago. So, yeah.
Okay. Just for the sake of time and moving along the discussion here, just to reiterate some things. Any cannabis related business currently operating will have to meet new standards if this is approved and provide yearly standards to meet with their business license that the city approves.
Yeah, so those aren't brand new standards. It's just kind of tweaking the existing standards.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are they tangible? The new standards, like something that causes me to scoff about the smell might not be the same as
Yeah.
people to my right and left. So is it like a decibel reading for noise?
Yeah, odor is a little bit different than that, but there have been cities throughout the country that have, they've instituted these odor control standards and they've withstood legal scrutiny
Okay.
and tests. So, yeah, but it's not quite as easy as a, decibel reader or decibel monitor.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's complaint based. We have the.
Yeah. The other question is,
Yeah.
what's the impact on the current business? I mean, what are you looking at current impact for the businesses that are already existing? I mean,
Non-cannabis related or?
no, just the businesses that this law affects, or these codes affect.
Like the number of businesses?
Well, not the number, but
Okay.
have we looked at, what's the impact of what we're doing here,
So the businesses should be complying currently with our odor control.
So if we pass this, they're fine.
Yeah, what
Yeah.
they should, it'll require them to write out an odor control plan. We currently require them to submit like their engineered drawings and
Sure.
receipts for their filtration. And this does require them to do a little extra work, an odor control plan, which also outlines things like employees opening and closing doors, how they dispose of their waste, so waste is not sitting in an unopened container. So there's some
Got it.
things that may require extra work, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to require a financial impact if they've already been complying with the odor control as our current code requires. But I don't have a number.
Oh, I just, that's a curiosity question. The other part of it is I do agree that, I'm looking at, from the city's perspective, having a third party air quality engineers,
Well, just an HVAC,
well, he would know
certified
more
HVAC
about.
professional
that
that can
sounds
follow
reasonable.
NAFA guidelines.
Yeah, that sounds reasonable to me, and it takes the onus off. If I look at this thing, it takes the onus off the city. The city says, well, we don't know exactly, what's bad and good, but these guys do.
Yes.
And you need to have these guys approve of it, because these guys are the pros and the experts here,
That was my concern there, is that I don't know who in the city could take their personal bias out and actually be an expert in each one of these fields
Okay.
down there.
I'm just going to inject this a little bit. So there's nothing in the code drafts that requires someone that's hired full-time at the city to conduct the inspections. So I'll just read for the business licensing inspection section.
Sure.
City employees and persons assigned to conduct business inspections shall be authorized to enter upon blah, blah. So could be a third party, does not have to be someone at the city that would conduct. the inspection.
So the city could actually hire them.
Which brings
to
up
do that.
another question, is why is that language in there when code 1.08, I think it's 030, already has righted inspection for any business out there? I mean, we're kind of duplicating that and then making it harsher for the cannabis industry than any other. I mean, code 1.8 is a right of entry for inspection. Basically covers that, but doesn't put the meat as far as the threat of there in there. But it does say, there'd be a violation and we can enter an emergency if we want to. So I don't know why we're repeating that.
Okay, so at the worst, it's redundant? Is that what you're?
It's redundant and it
Okay.
seems a little bit biased towards this industry.
Well, if there's an issue with gaining access, particularly in this industry, I think that's probably where there was something about unrestrained domesticated dog, vicious animal. That's not something that's pulled from thin air. That's probably from past experience, I'm guessing.
And this is where again?
This is
It's
under the business license section K,
Oh, here, yeah.
and onto the next page, 7 of 8, it says something, failure to grant entry
Yeah, the boiler.
be grounds to
Yeah.
terminate under EMC 13.04050E. Presence of an unrestrained domesticated dog, or vicious animal upon entry. So I mean, this is probably put in here because we've had this experience with a city employee or tried gaining access and not been granted it.
Tried gaining access and not been granted.
Okay,
I think it's really important to write code that it affects all the businesses down there equally.
Mhm.
And it should apply to all of them equally down there. I mean, if anyone has a dog down there in a welding or a paint shop and we see fumes coming out,
Mhm.
it should apply. I mean, so that's just why I said it seemed redundant and a little biased towards this.
But if somebody triggered this from the way that this is written, if this was say, let's just use a different example. If this was a auto body shop and they were painting, okay? And they had their doors rolled open and one of the surrounding businesses called for the new procedure and complained, that would trigger our code or a representative to come and do our procedure, which is
Which is
sit and
covered under
monitor.
code 1.08.
Yeah, which is monitor, right? But
Mhm.
to your point about gaining access and this being biased is it would trigger that same response for paint, for glue. It would be a call complaint driven
Mhm.
on the smell. So I don't per se see bias in that, in the sense that if you went down there and you smelled the fabric or the cabinet shop and they didn't have they had the doors open and there was no mine, and then you complained, and then another person complained. And then the city came and they sat there for their wait period of time and the smell didn't reside, and it was still there. This would trigger that same thing for them. It would
But
open
then
that
couldn't
same
it
door.
be under that same ordinance? Does it need to specifically call out cannabis separately? Because that's where I'm seeing the bias.
Yes.
It would potentially be redundant. And I'm, because Jonathan is talking about is the odor code that council is reviewing also has the allowing staff to come on and do the inspections. So it is potentially redundant.
Dealing with healthcare, I've had to boggle through Bibles of code. And when you start getting it so wordy and redundant and stuff, it's really difficult. And then you get more into conflicts because if they aren't worded exactly the right, which one's precedent? And you end up, it's just not very clean way of writing stuff to me.
Could I
Okay.
just clarify, as I try to comprehend all of this, there's two asks here. The first is really to prohibit any new marijuana or cannabis industry into the city council or into the city, whatever you call that, industrial area, but city limits, there you go.
Mhm.
And then second would be to change the current requirements for existing cannabis businesses. But what's not here, but is coming to us likely soon, is an additional odor.
And that would not come to you.
Okay.
Because it is not in the development code.
Got it.
It is in,
Okay.
it is in Title 8, which is, I believe,
Okay.
health and safety. So it goes straight to city council. So you are
Okay.
not seeing the changes in the business licensing code
Okay.
or in the code related to health and safety that are Title 8 and Title 9 that the city council
Yeah.
is reviewing. That will also address some of the issues that we're looking to, we're trying to kind of do a holistic view at all
Yeah.
the codes that might address these issues. So it's
Okay.
not just cannabis, it is all of the issues that would be related to odor.
Okay. And the why behind the future prohibition of cannabis industry at the industrial park is primarily because of business owner complaints on odor, correct?
Primarily, there have been other issues with just illegal operations,
Okay.
business licensing issues. I mean, we're still dealing with that today.
Okay.
Yeah, and odor.
Yeah,
Okay.
it has taken, just the management of those types of business has taken a lot more time from staff and police and communicating with outside officials at state and federal
enforcement.
agencies than any other industry that we have had in the park.
Thank you. It's normal. Okay.
Okay. Any further questions? Okay, so we are through the staff presentation of this. Let's go ahead and jump into the, if it's okay with everybody on the commission, to jump into the public hearing portion where we will ask citizens, of which we have none in person, but possibly online, to go ahead and introduce yourself, raise your hand, if you will, online to speak.
There's no one online.
Okay, it doesn't look like there's anybody online. Thank you, Evelyn. It doesn't look like there's anybody in public still or in person still, so we're gonna jump back into the planning commission meeting. And our job is to make a recommendation to the city council. Alan's kindly bringing it up right now. And again, this is a recommendation. We can adjust, add if need be, anything that gets adjusted or motioned needs a second and then a vote by our commission in order to go to the city council. So
I'd like to make a motion to deny the ordinance 2025-004 with the finding that one or more of the approval criteria cannot be met. I think it does damage, and we don't know the certainty of the economic conditions of it, the impact on it, and
Okay, so that bracketed thing is that we need you to point to the approval criteria that is not or cannot be met. That's kind of a placeholder.
I think economic and the conflict of interest down there, I think, is two things that I just didn't see correct.
Which approval criteria would that be?
Well, the economic that you wrote out, thinking that it wasn't gonna affect economics in the area, it clearly does.
The
maybe-
finding wasn't that it would not affect economics down there or in the industrial area. It was that these policies, these two policies are met. If you can, yeah, I mean. Or I should say staff believes that they're met. If you believe they're not met and that's your motion, that's totally fine, but.
If that
I don't think
motion
it's
is okay,
supportive.
I'll second it.
Yes, I don't think it's supportive to the in-business environment. I think you're harming a business environment down there.
okay, so we have a motion, we have a second. Let's discuss. Go ahead, anybody.
It sounds like the other criteria that are going straight to City Hall is covering the issues that this business that previously was breaking laws was causing for our city. So it sounds like the problem will be solved through other methods that don't need to single out cannabis.
Agreed. And it's a more nuanced approach than, I mean, we can always review it in 6 months or a year and come back and say, hey, this didn't work. I mean, I think taking in-house monitoring of that is crazy. It should be a third party paid for by the industry. Just my opinion.
I would just like to add that the drafts as written, or the draft amendments do not preclude a third party from conducting those inspections. Thanks.
But it would be mandating it. I mean, you'd have to make them pay for it. Right now, if we call in a third party, we're gonna be paying for it unless we really change stuff to be able to build.
That section for the paying, that would be included, not in the development code. The fee schedule does not go in the development code. That's passed by resolution by the city council. So if we wanted to amend the inspection portion, that would be included in the city's fee schedule, which is a resolution passed by the city council and would be included as part of business licensing, in which business licensing for cannabis businesses already does have a higher cost than regular businesses.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna ask a procedural question. I remember a couple of years ago, it was a hotly contested conversation at the city council level about to allow marijuana or cannabis or not to, both in retail and in wholesale. And I remember, obviously the city at that time voted not to have retail inside the city limits.
No, but at that time, the issue was to expand the locations in which retail may be available. They were looking at potentially expanding it into the downtown zone.
Yeah.
And so retail is currently allowed within the highway commercial.
Highway commercial, and I believe general commercial, but let me.
Yeah, there's a couple of zones which it's currently allowed
Well,
in, and that was
yeah.
looking at expanding it. And then city council at that time chose not to expand the locations in
Yeah.
which retail, that was not related to wholesale or to production, which is
Okay.
specifically what's.
Was
in-
there ever a decision, and I'm just, I'm trying to contextually get
Yeah.
to what my ultimate question is. At some point, did this, at the city council level, did they make a decision to allow wholesale? Or-
So when in 2016, we amended the city code to allow for the production of marijuana businesses. That's what's happening is the growing and production of marijuana and cannabis businesses in the industrial
Yeah.
campus.
Yeah,
And did that
production
come
and
through the
processing.
planning commission in 2016, just the same
It
as
might have been
this?
2015, but yeah.
Yeah, that, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Procedurally,
Procedurally,
Yes,
that would
yes.
have come.
It would
before
have
the
needed to,
planning
any
commission.
changes to the development code have to go to planning
Okay.
commission
Yes.
first, yeah.
okay,
Yep.
that answers my question, because my question was going to be, the intent here is to reduce cannabis production, period, in our city limits. And so I was just wondering if there was just a way for the city council to do that, since it's really their desire.
Yeah, so even if the planning commission denies this, it still goes to city council, and
Right.
city council is the final decision-making body of
Yeah.
the city. So they could approve it even if the planning
Right.
commission denies.
One thing I'd like to do as a part of this discussion, I don't want to drag this out longer than we need to. Commissioner Exenberger, your motion talks about economic adversely affecting the economic status out there of businesses. And so I just want to go through actual draft 16 code amendments of which of these new changes are you speaking directly about? Because a lot of this is just cleaning up language. And I think there's probably 95% good here. And I think you're probably struggling with something specifically. And so as I go through this, there's definitions of cannabis on page 2 of the draft code. We added a "the" on page 3. I don't think that's an issue. Struck out some stuff on page 4.
I don't think it's any specific. You're wrong. I don't think it was a specific issue. I think it's the general direction. This is clearly designed to eliminate cannabis industry in this city. I mean, the way it's written with the inspections with no criteria. I mean, I don't know what's the criteria for, okay, I inspect you and I think you're totally failed at this. What was my criteria to say your business failed?
Gotcha.
The
Um,
odor
that would be-
control plan that they submit as part of their business licensing.
So as long as they follow that, they can't, the inspection, even if all the
they-
neighbors
there's
say
an-
it stinks, this is horrible.
No, so the annual inspection or the regular inspection is based on their odor control plan that they would submit as part of their business licensing. If the way the odor code is currently written, and it has not been adopted by council, so it could change. We don't have to go onto the premises. It is from the property line. So from the sidewalk, if you can smell the odor, that does not require an inspection.
So is every business down there gonna follow that? I mean, if it's a welding business?
Yes,
is
every
the
business,
painting-
every business would be required to follow that same guidelines, is that they should be able to contain their odors on their property.
That's an industrial area. Do you think that's practical? I mean, have you tried doing construction without doing dust and without, I mean, that's a pretty tough, I mean, you're eliminating a business is what I see. You're being very unfriendly to businesses, the way it's written. I'm not saying this isn't a problem. It shouldn't be dealt with. I'm saying the way it's written is very unfriendly to business, and in a small city that needs more tax revenue and more infrastructure, we need to be friendly to these businesses, and they also need to be friendly to their neighboring businesses. I mean, I'm not one side or the other, but we need to meet them halfway. I don't know that we've done that.
I just want to know, it looks like Tara is online.
I'm sorry, guys. I screwed up and thought it was noon. So I hope I'm not disrupting.
No, you're not. Thanks for joining.
Sorry.
I think we're gonna need your vote. In either
Oh,
way.
great.
So we're at the stage 2 of the meeting of ordinance 2025-004, just to catch up. We have a motion on the floor to deny the staff report as presented, along with a second. And so we're in the discussion phase of that, just to catch up to speed, Tara.
Okay, thank you.
And so feel free to discuss if you want. Where we were is I kind of wanted to go through and see what specifically in here we had an issue or issues with, but you said it wasn't anything specifically, just kind of generally, right?
Well, it's the elimination of an industry that is
Well, it's not,
contributing. It's not elimination of an industry. It is being unfriendly towards a business,
Is it unfriendly?
responsive to the business environment.
mm, in general, yes,
Mhm.
but specifically, no. Because specifically, we're not kicking anybody out of this thing. Anybody in the cannabis business currently is grandfathered into this particular class. So specifically, we're not kicking them out. And we're not really, from what I understand, imposing an onerous burden in any way. And the only thing my only issue with what we have here is that, third-party inspection, I think, is written into the code. If you see it, if it's there. And, I'm not trying to put more burden on the city, to try to regulate this thing. We need to have somebody that's professional, that's beyond our skill scope handling,
Mhm.
and, anything else that comes down the pike, as we try to develop the industrial area like Souder, I think we had a discussion about the laminates and what's going to happen there.
It's not gonna go. You're gonna have to shut them down too. I mean, you're gonna stand on the corner, you're gonna smell laminates and you're gonna shut down a multi-million-dollar business. We need this kind of business in this, but if you apply this criteria to another big business down there, it's gonna be very hard.
And it's
Yes.
preventing businesses that could be really positive to our community. We don't know because they
Mm.
don't exist because of a prior problem that's already been solved.
I do want to get you guys back on focus because
Sure.
the odor code does not go before your body.
I know.
The before your body is changes to the development code which is chapter 16. And if you
Right.
have objections to the potential odor code, which will go before city council, you can object those to city council, but that is not a criteria for your basis of this decision.
But this.
As
gets teeth
before
to
your-
The odor code, so it
The
does.
odor code does not need this to have teeth.
Yeah.
You're giving the inspections and the right to, if
Inspection-
someone from the city shows up and says, this is bad, I can shut your business down. That's a lot of power.
So inspections
any
are allowed in chapter 1, as you already pointed out, that is pretty much redundant in this code. They are already allowed. If they violate a ordinance, it's already allowed for them to have inspections.
So we don't need this.
The inspection
it's written
portion
elsewhere.
could be removed. That is redundant.
Well, in the shutting down business,
Well, they're not shutting anybody down. They're not shutting, we're just trying to expand, regulate and expand in different ways, Economic development is always a tough issue, but
But it
I don't-
does
I don't have a-
prohibit one particular kind of business.
well, I think we can regulate a particular type of business, though, and
We can prohibit it certain types of businesses right now, and we do prohibit certain types of
Mm.
businesses in our code right now. If something that wanted to come in that was doing like, I don't know, us maybe smelting would potentially not be allowed based on the code right now because it would not be considered light industrial as our code is written.
Yeah, it's essentially what zoning is. It's just
Yeah,
limiting
you,
what uses are allowed.
what
where in
uses
cities,
are
we
allowed
Do
and
it all
not
over the
allowed.
city. We don't allow single family homes in the industrial area, for example. And we don't allow, as
wait,
Elena
wait.
said, a lot of different kinds of businesses are not allowed there. We don't allow retail.
Hoping we're not losing scope.
In
Is
the-
solder
in the-
allowed to make laminate beams down there?
That is considered a light industrial.
Yes.
It's not considered a heavy industrial.
Yeah, 'cause, I
However-
mean, you're gonna smell it from the street.
And that's,
Criteria.
and that is not a criteria for the development code. That is a criteria for chapter 8, which goes before the city council.
Okay.
Motion is.
We have a motion, we have a second. It seems like we've discussed and everybody has varying opinions, so I think probably the best thing to do is take a vote. We have 1, 2, 3, 4. We have 6 members available, missing 1. So just for conversation's sake, if it's a 3-3 tie, it doesn't really matter. It goes to the city council, right?
Yeah, because the city council, regardless of your recommendation will go to the city council regardless of
It-
whatever.
With
it
a, with a
is.
3-person vote, does and as the denial sits, is that enough
No.
to
What is that?
recommend the denial, or does it have to go back and we have to go adjust it?
I think it would be no decision.
Yeah,
It would be a no decision.
if you guys are just deadlocked, it's no
We-
decision.
Since we don't have a tiebreaker, I
You-
mean, that's a no decision.
And you could, if you have specific portions of the code that you want to change, rather than just completely deny, you can
Yeah.
recommend that and table it and bring it back at another meeting. So if there's portions of this code, which I think Ben was trying to kind of get you at, is there portions of the code which you think are agreeable, or is it the entire thing that you don't agree with? And if there's portions of the code that you do agree with, you could potentially say, we want to have staff amend the code, remove these portions, and then come back and table it for your next meeting. Or if you end up with like a tiebreaker, then it would just be no decision and could go before the city council.
Yeah, I'll bring the motion options up again.
Well, we still have a motion on the floor, so.
You still have a motion on the
Yeah,
floor.
well,
you
it is
still,
still-
you have to
we have
vote.
We have to vote.
Yeah,
one
I'm sorry, I'm really sorry. Can I just, since I missed part of this conversation and so I understand exactly what I'm voting on, the inspections are not part of this, the odor is not part of this. We're essentially voting on whether or not the city can keep, it can decide to not issue further permits moving forward to cannabis related businesses in the industrial area. Is that, and the impetus for this is the odor.
Okay,
Is
yeah.
that the
so
nutshell?
I can kind of explain. So what you're voting on is whether to approve or not approve the list of code amendments, the Title 16 code amendments that's in the draft in that document that was provided. And yeah, and I'll go back up to kind of the nutshell of the proposal. That's way up there. Yeah, there you go. Can you see that, Tara?
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, so the first part would be to prohibit new cannabis production processing businesses anywhere in city limits with allowing existing businesses to continue. And there's also some revisions to operation and licensing requirements, including some language around inspections that the existing businesses would be subject to if this were to be approved.
And the main problem that people are trying to solve is the smell problem. Is that right?
That is the main problem. There have been numerous other problems connected to businesses of this kind.
Okay, got it. Sorry, everyone.
That's all right.
So
Okay.
When there's a motion on the floor, I can,
Those 2 items right there is the whole.
I can,
Yeah,
oh,
there's nothing more complicated than that, so.
so Tara, the motion is to recommend denial of the ordinance with the finding that the economic development chapter of the comprehensive plan can't be met.
Okay.
All right. Without any further ado, let's vote on this. A yes vote means you're in favor of the denial. A no vote means you are not in favor of the denial. Okay? All those in favor of said motion, for denial of ordinance 2025-004, please raise your right hand. We have
That's two.
two. All those no votes, please raise your right hand.
No,
All right, so the denial, the recommendation of the denial did not pass. So we need a new motion. It still can be a denial, just needs to be reset or things added, or it can be a recommendation of approval with the following changes.
What would those changes look like, though? But specifically, since we have to be so specific, what specifically are we thinking about changing in this that would satisfy you? Yeah, well, well, understand that codes are a moving thing,
Yeah.
you start somewhere, we're starting somewhere. If it doesn't work out for us, we'll be here a year from now, making changes again, so.
I move to recommend approval of ordinance 2025-004 with the following changes, that instead of eliminating cannabis, you do a 1-year moratorium on it, and you require third-party certifications that their HVAC systems are being operated and maintained to the NFA specifications or guidelines, and that this be reviewed in a year to see if the problem still exists or if it's gotten better.
We have a motion. We have a second. No? John, for those of us that are not that familiar with NFA guidelines, what does that look like in a real in a real world?
The National Air Filters Association is a group of professionals that develops filters and systems. They have specific guidelines for every industry, for car painting, for cannabis industry, indoor, outdoor, and they tell you how much CFM you can put through a filter, UV, light, what the limitations are, when they should be changed out.
Okay.
And how they're operated. It would take it out of the city. It wouldn't be the city's dime. It wouldn't be there. You hire J.H. Kelly or any HVAC company out there that has certified people, and they come in and they verify, give the city a report that yes, the system is operating as designed or per their balancing report. And it would take it out of the city. It would also take the liability out of the city's hands, because it isn't a city official or anyone from us. It is a third-party professional calling the shots.
Okay.
And if you're going to close down someone's business, it should be a third party, in my opinion.
Thank you.
Elena, could I ask a question? If
Sure.
In the business thingy that we're looking at, in section D, number 1 is a place where odor exists. And then in section F, that green added section is also a spot where odor exists. Are those things that we do have control over when it comes to odor, or does the potential odor proposal that's separate from this, would it also take the authority to monitor and regulate that? Because if odor is, I think, the thing that we're trying to support, there is a couple places where we do have control over odor,
Mhm.
and that's in the plan and where the waste is.
Yes.
And so would it be to our advantage to, if we were to recommend changes, to recommend that in the odor one that's outside of our jurisdiction, take over these two areas of responsibility? Or do we have the ability on our side to possibly recommend changes that gives us more odor authority? If that makes sense, only through those two places, but.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the D here, D odor, has to do with a lot of the things that are initiated upon the building permit.
Okay.
And so the odor control plan, the building shall be equipped with activated carbon filtration, the filtrations, these are all things that when the building is built or the person moves in and does the stuff they need to put themselves in that building, that's when that is initiated.
Okay,
And that is not gonna be in the odor. It could potentially go into our building code, but it wouldn't be going into the odor code because the odor code is part of the city's nuisance code. So it has to
Got it.
do, that nuisance code also
Yep.
deals with things like sound and, trash and
Yeah.
weeds and
Okay.
things that are considered a nuisance.
okay. Is there a pathway, I guess, based on the recommendations to say like in the specifics of the odor control plan that it reflects some of the desires of the planning commission?
Yeah, so the way the green line is
Yep.
written, businesses shall be required to submit an odor control plan. You could put the sections that John has talked about, requiring the third-party inspections. If you want to insert those there, that would be a good
Acceptable
way.
pathway?
Yes.
Okay. That's something I would support if that's something you wanted to do.
Supporting that as well.
In D8, it kind of alludes to some of that. An alternative odor control system is permitted if the applicant submits a report by a mechanical engineer licensed in the state of Oregon, demonstrating the alternative system will control odor as well or better than the activated carbon
Mhm.
filtration system. I mean, it doesn't go into that third party portion of it, but it's,
Suggests you have to have a mechanical engineer.
well, and that's a pathway around if that carbon filtration isn't doing it.
Yeah.
Okay. Do we want,
There's a motion on the floor. You still need a second.
Yeah, it hasn't been seconded yet.
I would like to see that we remove the prohibition of the new business.
There's the motion on the floor and you have to have a second and then vote, or John has to
Draw the motion.
withdraw his motion before you can make a new motion.
Okay.
I'll withdraw my motion if there's no second. That's easy.
Okay.
I'm easy.
Ryan, you can go ahead and make your motion if you like.
Okay, well,
Oh, I meant Ryan Tucker. Sorry.
oh, sorry, two Ryans.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Ryan.
So I was just thinking if we had a motion that approved the changes and allowances for them to review odor control, but took away the prohibition of establishing new business, then I would be for that.
And I would
Okay.
second that motion.
so if we want to do that, let's make it official and Ryan Tucker, you can go ahead and make a motion with said changes and
Okay, I move to recommend the approval with the following changes of removing the prohibition of the establishment of new cannabis and marijuana production and processing businesses within Estacada city limits.
we got a motion? Do we have a second?
I'll second that motion.
All right, we got a motion, we got a second. A motion for approval. Any discussion needed on this? Okay,
Yeah, sorry. So this would basically eliminate anything with the word cannabis in it.
No, it just eliminates when we go to 16.65 where we have moved it from an outright use to the prohibited use. So
Yeah, so
Um,
let's
yeah.
see, exhibit one.
You would change the
page-
word prohibited.
yes, so it removes where we move it to 16.39.
Page 4.
Yeah,
Exhibit 1, page 4.
pretty much page 4 of the amendments. It moves. So it would remove line C where it's prohibited and then and update or leave it as it currently reads. under controlled substances, 16.65005 applicability.
But I'm looking at that particular section here, it says within the city limits,
Yes.
and
Well, we can
That's all
only
we have control
control.
over.
that's only.
Yeah, that is implied. It's already,
Okay. But we want to just keep it in the industrial area. Can we
'Cause
be more,
this-
but
this-
that's how the specific language works.
this is,
Okay.
yeah, this
Yeah, I get
specific
it.
language is about the industrial zone.
It could also be worded prohibited use within the M1, but it's just more, because it's only allowed in M1 right now. It just
Yeah.
it made more sense, at least I thought it did, to just say prohibited within esticated city limits if you're taking it out of M1.
So wouldn't the motion be just to retain the current language and just go ahead and not go with this language? And
That's
that
how I
would
read it.
pretty much
Yeah, I
take care of the
believe-
issue.
I
you know?
believe that when we look through, yeah, I think if you just
Yeah, just.
struck
retain-
these changes in this section, the applicability section, it would cover, oh, well, wait, no, then there's the M1
Yeah,
zone. You would need to, it struck it, yeah, so just above 1665 on the same page, that line that struck out G, marijuana production processing, that would also be left in.
mhm.
Okay. So we got a motion, we got a second. Do we want to amend that before we vote, or do we want to just go for it?
Can you rephrase your motion? The way you,
I'm not sure how,
or just
should be
state it over
rephrased.
again, just state it. So you're just saying get rid of that word in there with that whole line.
I want to get rid of the whole section where we prohibit new cannabis businesses in Estacada.
All right, so just to clarify, that's 16.65.005 applicability, items B and C. We're gonna go to, item B is gonna say marijuana and cannabis production as an outright use in the M1 light industrial zone, period.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
all the changes, the green language and the red, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, no, because we want to keep cannabis in there, right?
Yes.
Oh, I
Yes,
see, I see, I
wanna
see.
keep it.
We've
So,
already-
So then item C would be marijuana and cannabis processing as an outright use in M1
Mhm.
light industrial zone, period.
and then above that 16.39.035, where it says prohibited uses, we would remove the and cannabis production, processing and wholesaling. So we still, you're not allowed to have marijuana retailing in the industrial campus, which is what is current zoning is.
Can I ask how many cannabis businesses are currently there and whether there are any pending applications or businesses that is anybody interested in establishing another business?
I heard
Yes.
the number 11. Is that around? is that what you said?
I want to say that it's, well. I think
11?
it's- No, I think it's 6.
6, sorry. I think I got 11 from.
I think it's 6,
Oh.
but there is two.
Even
there's
6 is
two-
a lot.
There, yes,
Yeah.
and there is 2 lots in the new Lock Martin subdivision that have submitted their business license, but we have not approved that yet because we also don't have their building permits. So we can't approve a business license until the building is done.
And those
Um,
are both marijuana related ones?
They're cannabis related. I don't know
Oh.
if they're marijuana or hemp, but they are cannabis
Okay.
businesses. Yes, so that would make it about 8. I don't have the exact number, but I believe it's around there.
That's quite a tax base.
Okay. I think it's time to vote. We have a motion, we have a second with the adjusted changes of 16.39 and 16.65. Correct?
That's right, yeah.
Okay,
We've captured that.
okay. All those in favor of moving this, or approving this and having the city council, vote on it at a later date, please raise your right hand. I have 1, 2.5. 2. We have 2. Okay, all those opposed, please raise your right hand. Okay. It looks like that got voted down again.
Tara, were you a no on that?
Oh, I mean, to be honest, I'm a little bit confused by some of the wording, but yeah, I guess so.
Okay. Do we need a fresh motion?
Well, I think the only one that's left that hasn't been tried is I would like to recommend approval of 2025 as presented by staff.
We got a motion.
I'll second.
Okay. Do we need to discuss?
No, I would like to comment that I would like the city council to, or Councilor Metcalf to be able to reflect and represent the conversation that was had here around that, just to make sure that the city council is informed of what I thought was a very rich conversation today. And that all things get considered, including enforcement, as well as what the original intent of this proposal is.
Yeah, I will tell you, I've been taking notes and there's a lot of things I found interesting. So yes, I will present this meeting,
Thank you.
especially this topic.
Thank you.
I also like, quick comment, I think what John had to say so far as the professional aspect of this thing has merit. And it should be considered in this thing. I'm in favor of limiting marijuana production in that area. As we try to bring on other businesses. I think 6 is enough, honestly, and I don't think, I'm glad that they want to come here, but there again, we've got to kind of limit our headaches and try to see if we can expand our base a little bit more, and that's certainly what we're trying to accomplish here. And 6 of anything in any one city, back in the day in New Hampshire, you had one. If you had one business like that, you couldn't have another one in that. So 6, I think 6 is enough.
That
Yeah.
doesn't apply to pizza in this city
Well, I know pizza.
or coffee.
I don't know.
Or
I don't
burritos.
got around New Hampshire that much, but
I will say that John's recommendations regarding the third party, that can go into the business licensing. That does not have to be portion of the development code.
Great.
And one last thing just to hit on it. As we get into any of these, whether it's marijuana or zoning at large, our scope as the planning commission is to review the code that's in front of us.
Yeah.
It's easy to get into all the other things that get wrapped into these. And so while we don't get to necessarily comment on the smell, we hope that the city council and staff and legal representation can wade through that and get into the nitty gritty. But again, that's not our job as a planning commission. We're here to review the chapter 16 here. And so with that being said, let's take a vote on this. All those in favor of recommended approval of ordinance 2025-004 as presented, and to move on to city council, please raise your right hand.
Aye.
Can I abstain
Absolutely.
Yes.
and still have enough numbers? Okay, great. I'd like to do that.
Okay. We have 3 votes in favor. All those opposed? It's like we have 2, and then we have 1 abstention
Abstention, yeah.
from Commissioner Perkins. Okay, this will go on to City Council July 17th. If any member wishes to speak at that meeting, they're more than willing and able to do so.
I also think it's July 14th.
Yeah, July 14th. Yeah, sorry.
I forgot to carry the 3, or I did carry the 3. Okay, July 14th. Appreciate the robust conversation from everybody. It's nice to have those, and moving right along to the next item of business. I don't think
They don't have
have
any.
any public comments. We have a meeting in July.
What are we
That we
looking
will
at
be-
there?
So far, you only have some sign code on the agenda for that one.
Okay.
The what code?
Sign
Right?
code.
Oh,
I thought
sign
there's
code.
2 things. Is it
That's
just
a-
the sign?
It's
Oh,
just the
geez.
sign code.
It's a hot button issue.
Yeah.
We're still coming back to the political sign code. Is that what we're talking about?
No,
No,
it's
no.
general sign code.
Oh, it's general sign. code.
General
Okay.
sign, very, yeah.
Yes.
It's like a
Okay.
reorganization of the chapter,
Mhm.
essentially, to make it easier to read and to apply.
Perfect.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Is that in line with, those of the Commerce Department? Who else is doing like signage? Is that just Wayfair signage for around town? Is that different?
It's business signing
Okay.
So I can still put up a big billboard,
for,
personal use.
well, I don't know. It depends on if it violates. the-
I'm kidding. Yeah.
Okay, thanks, everybody. And again, July 14th, both of these approvals to city council will be reconsidered. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Evan.
Yeah, that was a great conversation.